visit with us at the Rotary Club. Honored to have you back, and Bob as well. Dede gave me a bio, but I'm not going to read the whole thing because then it'll be 1:30 and you won't get to do it. I'll only read a couple of the first few lines. And Dede asked me, how the attendance is today, and I said, well, we've seen worse, but it's pretty dark for Dede, so I think we know why. If you want the fuller version, you can read the current New Canaan magazine, that's right, and there's a whole feature on Dede in it. Go read it, it's online, you'll probably get it in the mail as well. So, Dede is the founder and co-chair of the New Canaan Abuse Prevention Partnership, which is marking its 20th year serving the citizens of New Canaan. A frequent speaker on domestic violence, Dede is a former Fortune 500 executive officer, serves on advisory boards of the DVCC, it's on the table there, and Legal Momentum, the Women's Legal Defense and Education Fund. Dede also co-chairs the Dede Bartlett Foundation, where she's committed to advancing women empowerment and increasing the number of women pursuing degrees in STEM, science, and mathematics, computer science, engineering. The rest you can go read in the magazine. Dede, it's all yours. You have until 1:30. Looking forward to it.
Thank you very much. I feel like I know just about everybody in this room, and if there's somebody I haven't met, please see me afterwards. It is really absolutely marvelous to be here. And what I have realized is that it's probably been at least 5 or 7 years since I was here. But before I go on, I want to thank my dear friend, and certainly far better tech person than I'll ever be, Bob Doran. Bob has been involved with me very, very much from the beginning in the founding of the New Canaan Abuse Prevention Partnership. I don't know if all of you are aware, but in the last time I was here, which was 7 years ago, things for women and men here in New Canaan, girls and boys, have gotten a lot worse. A lot worse. Intimate partner violence is now New Canaan's #1 crime. The police know it, the social workers know it, town hall knows it, the hospitals know it, and now you know it. It is New Canaan's and Connecticut's #1 health problem. It affects 1 in 3 girls and women, and 1 in 3 boys and men. Think about that, 1 in 3. When we were growing up, there was nothing like this. This is an epidemic, this is real, and it's happening right in the middle of this beautiful surrounding that we call New Canaan. 5 years ago, Jennifer Doulos was murdered by her abusive ex-husband. But this, alas, was not a one-off. Since the Abuse Prevention Partnership was founded 20 years ago, there have been 2,000 calls to the police. And this is an underrepresented crime, vastly underreported. In those 2,000 homes, more than 500 children were present. For those of you who may not realize, witnessing, living in one of these chaotic, violent homes has long-term traumatic damage. That is why this is called a generational crime, because kids living in those homes will repeat those actions. As the Bible says, unto the 7th generation. This goes on and on. And those 2,000 cases that were called into the police, that's the tip of the iceberg. The tip of the iceberg. Today I have 3 goals. Very simple. To raise awareness about this issue with you, which is the #1 health issue in Connecticut and of course in New Canaan. 2, to give you the tools to help. And 3, to describe what you Rotarians need to do to help make New Canaan a safer place for everyone. So let me just go through what domestic violence is. Thank you, Bob, for putting all of this up. If you think of it as bullying, pure and simple, you've got the message. It is bullying. It is coercive behavior, whether it's online or in person or both, by an intimate partner. It can be husband, wife, it can be boyfriend, girlfriend, it can be child, parent, it can be all varieties of human nature. It can be physical, it can be sexual, it can be emotional, all of the above, and financial. And as I said, it can be online or in person. So what are the signs that your neighbor, your friend, your child, your mom is being abused? Well, they're not wearing it across their forehead. There's no scarlet letter here. But there are signs, and when you hear them and see them, you'll know. It's bullying and intimidation, as I mentioned. The abuser is jealous of the victim's family and friends, and so he will isolate her. I am using the he pronoun here because most of the violence that we see here in New Canaan tends to be perpetrated toward women. But this is an equal opportunity crime, and when we think about this in high schools and in middle schools, we're looking at bullying, and we're seeing boys and girls. So the pronouns can move back and forward. The abuser will try to prevent the victim from working or attending school or voting. Yes, voting. The abuser will control finances, will refuse to provide the necessities for that person to live. The abuser will pressure to have sex. There will be sextortation or blackmail. And Jean and I just heard a discussion this morning about sextortation among teens, and we can talk about that later. And Jean and I are still recovering from what we heard this morning. There'll be pressure to use drugs or alcohol. There'll be threatening with weapons. One of the more insidious ones is the threatening to harm a pet. What the FBI noticed about 25 years ago was a predictor of violent behavior of people who abused animals early on in their lives. They went on to carry the abuse further. It's a marker. And of course, they threatened to destroy belongings. Amidst all of this rather bad news, there is some good news. More New Canaanites are calling the police, or the Domestic Violence Crisis Center. For those of you who do not know, the Domestic Violence Crisis Center has given me some information which is on your table. I urge you to take it home, to read it, to take the cards. Last year, the Crisis Center served 79 women here in New Canaan. 79. Okay. Our friends, our neighbors, maybe our relatives. 79. Those are the ones that had the courage to come forward. The other good thing is the New Canaan police are trained in lethality assessment. When we began the partnership 20 years ago, the New Canaan police had not been trained. And when the police across the country come to a chaotic, violent household and they haven't been trained, they don't know who started the knifing, the fisting, the hammering away with weapons. And so 20 years ago, when the police would show up at one of these very violent homes, and by the way, this is the most violent crime that cops across the country ever go to. More cops are killed responding to domestic violence incidences than anything else. Okay? So we're not talking about a little spat. No, this is serious, tough stuff. So when our police 20 years ago would respond to an incident, they didn't know what was going on, and so they brought everybody down to jail. Well, we have reduced that incidence, so now we know, our cops know who threw the first punch, what has led up to this, and they can act accordingly. Our police also know now the complexities of domestic violence and mental health and substance abuse. There's a lot going on at the same time. And we have dozens of organizations here in town that help, and I'm particularly thinking about yours, Karen and Robert, Women Helping Women. You have done phenomenal work on helping some of our more vulnerable women here in town. But we need Rotary to help too. Partner violence and bullying are not one person's tragedy, they're not one family's tragedy. This violence impacts our entire community, the health and financial well-being of our entire community. Because when things go off the rails, we all pay. We all pay. Recently, I've learned that there's been a frightening escalation of violent behavior. Victims are experiencing more physical threats, greater actual violence. I'm talking about, let me be very specific, bookcases being thrown at a victim, pushing to the wall, very violent. And what accounts for this? Experts at the National Domestic Violence Hotline are reporting this. Our own folks here in town are reporting it, from Silver Hill to our own social workers. And they're citing the violent behavior around the election, leading up to the election. The National Domestic Violence Hotline is getting 3,000 calls a day, an increase, resulting from the strains of the election. Experts are citing menacing language at rallies and on TV, giving people permission to perform more violent acts in the home. The old adage, sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me, wrong. Dangerous words are leading to dangerous actions. So how can you help? You are our town leaders, every one of you. We need you to set the tone here in town. We need you to call out bad behavior when you see it. It seems trivial to talk about the destruction and removal of lawn signs, but it's not trivial. It's lack of respect for one another. We are better than that. This bad behavior has consequences. Our children are watching. They're learning. So as you reflect on what you can do in your spheres, be aware that the behavioral health survey that the town just went through, that all of you hopefully filled out, those results will be reported very soon. And the safety question in that result is very, very important. And we are teasing out that information now. The New Canaan Community Foundation is doing more research to find out why 36 people answered they do not feel safe in their homes. Okay? So my last message is, if New Canaan is to remain one of the most beautiful, livable towns in the country, it also must be one of the safest towns in the country. And right now, for some of our citizens, it is not the safest town in the country. So, on that somber note, Thank you very much for inviting me. I don't know if you'll invite me back after that. I hope you do, but I'd be delighted to try to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you. Yes, question? Yeah.
Dede, could you speak a little bit about what you learned this morning
Yes.
with online and what's going on with
Yes,
some of your-
Jean and Scott, who had to leave early, listened on the phone to a lead manager of a trafficking operation in New Haven, Connecticut. And I had thought before this morning's Zoom, the trafficking involved poor women brought across the border illegally, working in nail salons all over the country. That was my view. Well, it's not. It involves so many of our children and grandchildren in high school and middle school. 1/3 of all high school students across the country are exchanging intimate photos online. 1/3. That leads to a very, very bad place because the traffickers are waiting and grooming, and they are patient, as we learned. I asked a question about how does this relate to the rise in teen suicides? And it is a direct correlation. Because that young person feels too ashamed to talk to mom and dad, to get help, and takes that ultimate bad step. I am terrified of this. And I think if we're not terrified of this, we don't understand the severity of this problem. But it is extremely clear. I share Amy's view of our next few years here in this country. I do not know if we will get buy-in from the top of the House in the legislative branch to pursue some of what is going to be needed to tackle this problem. Yes.
Dede, if you see someone who you think is exhibiting signs of being abused, and you speak to them, and they say, no, I'm fine, what do you do next, besides be there to your friend?
Yeah, it's, of course, that's Jane, that's the perfect question. It takes a victim, I hate to use that word, but it takes someone who is surviving bad stuff at home a very, very long time to come for help. I worked with a bold-faced name here in New Canaan for 2 years to try to get her out of that situation. The New Canaan police were phenomenal. Jackie DeLuey and her folks at Town Hall were phenomenal. I put a team around her. I got lawyers for her. I helped raise money for her. It had taken her 15 years to leave that abusive relationship. She is now quite happy, thriving, never been happier in her life, and to see her face gives me joy, but you have to be patient. And finally, I knew the breakthrough had come with her when she invited me for a cup of coffee, and she said, gee, does this seem normal to you? And she described home life, and I said, oops, no, that's not normal, no. It's very frustrating, but it's important. And it's important that she knows you're there and safe, and you're not saying that awful thing of, well, why don't you leave? There's a whole host of reasons why she doesn't leave. Yes?
Dede, thank you for these great comments tonight.
Yeah.
I was just curious, what are the schools doing maybe at the high school level to educate students about what domestic violence might look like in their own homes and how to think ways that we can educate the younger people as they get older?
Yeah.
How to,
Yes, we do a lot of work in the high school. Jackie DeLuey does a lot of work each year. I talked with the first selectman, Deanna, and I talk at the high school each year in the month of October, which is, you know, purple. That's why this is here. It's a dicey situation because you've got kids living in homes that are chaotic. They know what's going on. There are some wonderful counselors at the school. There are teen talk counselors at the school that are great. Martha Huitron is the counselor at the high school. She was on our Zoom this morning. She is extremely good. Jeff Deek is the school resource officer. He's terrific. There is a school resource officer now in the middle school, and happily there is now one in the elementary school. Now, obviously, they're there for a host of reasons, including safety, okay, which obviously is terribly important. But they're also trained in helping kids. Personally, it's got to be very tough. I always give kids the telephone number of the National Domestic Violence Hotline, because navigating this has got to be very, very, very difficult. Yeah.
I'll just add to
Yeah,
that if I
please.
can. I mean, look, wasn't that long ago, 20 years ago, we started this. The goal really was to just bring it out in the open, get people to talk about it. That took what, 10, 15
Yeah, it
years?
took a long time.
The joke is I'd be standing in a group of people like this somewhere and say, "Hi, Bob, what are you up to? Working with Dede on this. What's going on with that?" Well, look around you, someone we know in this room is in a bad relationship, and they go, "Oh, look at the time, Bob, we gotta go get a drink over here." You know, I mean, the conversations ended very quickly. I think to your point about what are we doing is that if as a community we are talking about it, and we are finally talking about it, that's how people know it's okay to ask for help, to look and know that the community and all the work that Lauren and the foundation has been doing around that is amazing. As a community, it's not just this issue, let's talk about all our issues. But the more we're talking about it, the more people understand that it's okay to reach out to somebody, hopefully.
That's a really important point. That's good. Yeah, Jeannie.
That's my point
Amy.
too, because since this meeting this morning, it was like 1 hour later, I'm still trying to get my breath from the story that I've heard. And I had to interact with two people who are community leaders, important people, who all just didn't even want to have the conversation because it's so awful. And we've got to make knowledge power. They said, you can't tell a 12-year-old this. I said, we've got to. I'm sorry. Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
it's absolutely true. We have to look at that. Yes, Amy.
Yeah, I'm still struggling to think as an individual.
I'm sorry?
I'm struggling to think as an individual. If you're worried about someone, it's sometimes people push you back.
Yeah.
Maybe mind your business. But if you're really worried, can you, I mean, it's like that whole privacy thing, and people think it's their fault, it's not their fault. But is there a way to kind of give people a heads up, like, I'm just worried about these guys? I mean, then I can see like all the privacy issues and stuff.
Right.
I mean, like for instance, if I had a friend who I knew was in a bad situation, and you try to push you back, but you're worried about him, can you say
So
to somebody, can you get behind these guys?
Here's what you can do, because I know how frustrating it is, and you know that the person is in danger.
Yeah, or you think you could be wrong, that's a problem.
You could be wrong. But the thing is, if you keep that channel of communication open with that person, how are you doing? How are you doing? I did that with the lady that I helped. And she had heard me give this speech, probably 25 times. She had heard it, she knew it, she could have done it backwards and forwards, but she couldn't translate it into her own actions. Sometimes a victim will understand emotionally what you're talking about, logistically what you're talking about, but not translate it to their lives. When she decided to make the move is the most dangerous time. It is literally the most dangerous time, and that's the time where I packed a lot of law enforcement around her. I've packed a lot of advisors around her. Suzanne Adam at the Domestic Violence Crisis Center walks on water. She was on speed dial for her as we walked her through those critically dangerous points when the victim had decided to leave, because that's when the lethality will occur. He is losing control, he doesn't like that, and that's when bad things will happen to her, to the kids. Those are the things we wanted to prevent, and we were able to do that. If she knows in advance that there's a safety plan in place, so that when she's ready, because she's the only one who can make that determination when she's ready, because she knows she's living with a powder keg. And that's we can't jump into her shoes on that, as frustrating as it is for us, because we can see where that road is going. Yeah, yes, I'm sorry. Oh. Yes.
I'm curious on the portion of it that's related to, or social media or technology versus the purely physical aspects of violence. Is there any data on that?
Yeah, there's a lot of data on that. When we started the partnership 20 years ago, you know, you think back, it's the Pleistocene. You know, it is ancient time. We didn't have to deal with social media, you know. There were a few emails going around, that was it. Social media has been no friend to victims of partner violence. It's been no friend to kids being bullied in school. And the bullying and the violence are the same thing. A friend of mine used to say that bullies are basically abusers in training. That's what they are. Yeah, social media has exacerbated things so much. Sextortation wasn't even in the vocabulary 10 years, even 10 years ago. It was very scary, yeah. And God knows with AI now. I'm not smart enough to even know where that's going. Yeah.
Are there any efforts by someone?
There's a lot of efforts, the biggest thing, and I think that you all were talking about that over there, is getting into schools and helping children understand, because these are the digital natives, helping children understand the respect aspect, the guardrail aspect. You know, you fell in love at age 12, and of course you're gonna, you know, want to do some crazy things, but exchanging pictures, that's a bad thing, okay? And it's really trying to get to them. I think we can do more. I have to do a lot more. Yeah. Am I missing anything?
Now, what,
Yeah.
Dede, what organizations do you work with locally that help you with your mission? But besides the police and town hall, any nonprofits that you?
Jackie DeLuey at Town Hall, who is the head of Family and Children's Services in town, is my really expert person. She's phenomenal. The Domestic Violence Crisis Center has operations in Stamford and Norwalk, and they are superb, absolutely superb. Robert and Karen have done an exemplary job with women empowering women. Kids in Crisis is phenomenal. They are just absolutely great. Am I missing any others, Bob?
Those are the two.
Those are the, seems like the main
Two that
ones.
we intersect with, yeah.
I'm really impressed at how people have looked squarely at this issue. They have not turned away. They understand how terribly important this is. The parenting classes, the programs at the Y, the programs at the library. People, this is not the New Canaan I came to decades ago. This is a community that is willing to look at the other side of the pretty part here. Yeah.
I've asked this in the past and never got a great answer. Is there anything to be done to help the bullies? Because they are really the problem.
Yeah.
And they seem to be unreachable and keep bullying. Now,
Yeah.
what are we?
That's a really good question. And you know, bullies just don't come out of the air. Bullies come from homes where there is, thank you, And when, especially when you live, and this is what the experts will tell you, when you live in an upscale, type A driven community like ours, you are going to get a fair proportion of bullies. Have you all been to a child's game and seen the parents on the sidelines? All right? My case in point. All right? Yeah, yeah. My husband coached travel soccer for a while, and I think he spent as much time with the kids as he did with their parents, trying to calm the parents down, you know? Yes.
Dede, you know, one of the aspects of this, I had mentioned I had this friend, years ago I had a babysitter I was concerned about. And it was very awkward because her dad and Jim were in the same club together, and this was out in Los Angeles. And I was very worried about her. And you know, approaching a 16-year-old to say, "Are you okay? You know, do you feel safe? Is anybody hurting you?" I didn't know what to do. And some of this, I think, is like, you know, the scales have to fall from our eyes. You don't want to go around being suspicious of everything, but sometimes when you get that little voice in the back of your head that says, "Geez, this doesn't seem normal," you know, you have to, I think, look at it. And in her case, it turned out, yes, indeed, she had been abused by an uncle who lived with them for a while. And the only way I knew how to get to it was I was doing pro bono work with a rape treatment center. We did their advertising on a pro bono basis. And so I spoke to the director there, and when I told her what the girl had said, she said, "Jane, definitely she's being abused." And shortly thereafter, the girl, what do you call it, when they declare emancipation when they're 16?
Yeah.
But, you know, then I remember thinking, what kind of life is she going to have now if she goes off, you know? But again, I mean, for me, some of it is, you don't want to be suspicious of everybody, but when you get that little inkling that something's off, you got to at least reach out and say, you know, "Are you safe? Are you comfortable?"
And that's, Jane, that's the best question. Are you safe?
Yeah.
And be prepared for, oh, everything's fine.
Yeah.
Everything's just fine. And, but it's that knowing that you're there, hopefully they'll reach out. They don't always. You know that, Karen. They don't always reach out. And you lose some. And it breaks your heart. Especially when you know something's not right. I'm not a mandated reporter, but teachers are mandated reporters. Okay, and there's a whole classification of folks who are mandated reporters. And so sometimes it could be helpful if you were to share that concern with a teacher in her school, because they are mandated. Is that working for you?
I'm a retired teacher.
They're not working, okay.
You're putting more stuff on the teachers. I mean, I understand kids, teachers see kids every day. We're the good ones to keep an eye on everything in these kids' lives. But that's why I gave them.
No, you know, you're right.
And I have had to do it, and anonymously, if you're working with respectful people, you can do it. It's one of the most intimidating things I had to sit through. No fun, and you know, you're helping a kid hopefully. But I think back also when you were talking about the internet and stuff, used to be Polaroid pictures. You know, one-on-one. People couldn't make copies of them too easily, but now it's just another world. I'm retired.
Happily so, I gather.
Yes.
Yeah.
Dede?
Yes. Sorry.
Yeah, as you said, it's a few years since you've been here. One probably naively hopes you'll come back and say things have improved. But, you know, knowing where social media now is ramped up, kind of didn't expect that message, but nevertheless, I mean, the picture you painted is very depressing. Right, so we've got tons of resources, very good police organizations like this, the work that you're doing. We've got a lot of research going on which can drive actions, but we have social media, we have AI, and now, as you say, we have the election and its consequences. My question is basically, do you have any reason for optimism?
And that is an excellent question, and I have reason for optimism because you've invited me. You want to learn. You want to make things better, okay? You have organizations like this. They need funding. If for no other reason, you can write a check. I will tell you, the next couple of years are going to be grim for partner violence organizations, and they are desperate for funds, absolutely desperate for funds. The need is growing, and the situation legislatively is not looking happy. Okay, so yes, there are good people, and it's hug your family, hug your friends, and support the organizations that are doing good, and give them a little bit more, because they're gonna need a lot more in the next couple of years. Yes?
So I was wondering if you had any statistics. It occurs to me that the pattern repeats itself. You've said the beginning of the pattern is we have to make society aware. We have to talk about it, as Bob mentioned. Okay, done. The second, I think, inflection point is getting that person to make the decision, right, that I'm in a bad situation, and getting them to call, get the support, have conversations, get ready to make the decision. Once the victim decides, okay, I've decided I'm in a bad situation and I'm gonna leave, and I pack and I tell my bully I'm leaving, and then I leave. Talk to me about what happens next, because it occurs to me that now the bully may call me and say, come on, I've changed. It's not so bad. And so I'm wondering, how many of these people does it stick? Does it work? And what can we be doing to help them after they've made the decision that they're in a bad situation and they've decided to leave? How can we support them to stick with the decision?
Well, so here is a good question, and here is the way that goes. Women will stay in a situation that is abusive to protect their children and to keep a roof over their heads. Okay. Women very often leave the situation when their daughters, or sons, but generally their daughters, are getting to be around 12, because they know what's going to happen next. Okay, all right? Where she gets housing here in Fairfield County, where she gets a job if she has been out of the workforce for a long time, the matter of nuts and bolts financial living is daunting, absolutely daunting. I often wonder how many of the women who work in one of the wonderful shops that we have in New Canaan have a deep desire to go into retail, okay? Or if it isn't a way, and I know several of these women who have come from abusive relationships, okay? If she has had her own money all along, she's got a path for independence, but many of these women do not. That's one of the things that Karen's organization has done, is to help women get on their feet, job skills-wise, financially-wise, so forth. One of the programs at the Domestic Violence Crisis Center, which we started about 10 years ago, directly to that question, was helping women get a credit score, because very often he's run down the credit score, helping them get a bank account. Many of them have never had money in their own name. The financial ABCs they do not have. They need that. So we've had women here in New Canaan who have lived out of their cars so that their children can keep on going to the schools here in New Canaan. Okay. So there's a lot of reasons why her leaving is fragile, and what happens afterwards is very, very hard. Nobody ever chooses to go into a shelter. It's tough. Yeah, am I missing something?
No, I just want to put a button on one thing because of what John said. You said too, is there optimism, is there hope, what can we do, has been asked. As I look around the room, I happen to see a lot of men in the room. And the one thing that can be more helpful and needs to change more in dealing with this issue is more men have to be willing to stand up and say, that's unacceptable behavior. And that will help change. Because the only way we do really change this is by helping them, doing what we can now for people who have this issue, these issues, but also help the next generation change as young as possible. And men have a role in that, and men have not taken a strong enough role in this issue over the years.
And can I say also one thing, John? There's a great organization called Dress for Success. That if you have professional clothing that you're willing to donate, a lot of these women don't have what they need to go to a job interview. So if you have stuff in your closet that's, you know, suits and stuff that you wear in a professional environment.
I'd like to second that, Nancy, because I have taken a lot of clothes up to Bridgeport, and it's in kind of this dark building, and it's a little scary, and you walk up the stairs, you open this door, and it's all light, and these wonderful, wonderful people, and they will put together outfits from shoes to hats for these ladies so that they have the confidence when they go on an interview. So I think that's something that we could do too as a club, is collect clothes and take them up there.
Thank you all very much. I think I can see.